Hello, sports fans. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW, and we just had opening day for baseball, and I am here with my brother with another mother, Coach 24, Darwin Penny. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great today, Voice. We're excited about another season of Royals baseball. Didn't get off to the start we had hoped to, but there's 161 more to go.
Absolutely. And behind the scenes, running the show, Mr. DJ Scatter, George Walker. How are you doing today, sir?
All right, I'm doing super fantastic today.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, we're going to talk a lot about baseball. We will talk a few other things, but mainly baseball. And today I brought in a magazine from 1987, which brought memories to you as a former professional baseball player. And we were taking a look at that and just kind of just looking at it. And and we'll get into that a little later. But right now, we're going to talk about the Royals. Now, the Royals led the Cactus and the Grapefruit League in most wins, and they were just hitting the snot out of the ball. So they come today. The weather is decent. It wasn't great, but it hasn't been like it has been the last week or two or the last six months, it seems like, because it was always cold. Today was in the 60s. It was windy, but it was a great day. How did they perform out there?
Today was not a bad game. We just couldn't put many hits together. The Twins pitcher, Pedro Lopez, really threw an outstanding game. He kept the ball down. For as windy as it was, there were very few fly balls hit early in the game. You know, I was out there through the first 6 full innings, and you would have thought initially the wind was blowing straight out, then it shifted and started blowing right around the left field pole. But there really wasn't even a threat of a ball going out. And the pitchers, both pitchers, the starting pitchers, did a great job of keeping the ball where the hitters couldn't get good wood on it. We had a double by Michael Massey for our first extra base hit of the year. Salvi had our first hit of the year. It was a broken bat single, and I do mean a broken bat. Like half of the bat went one way and the ball went the other way. So,
yeah.
But yeah. I mean, we made one error defensively. It didn't come back to bite us as far as a run or anything like that. So, you know, we got a solid performance from Greinke. He gave us 5 strong innings without giving up a run. I guess that's really all you can ask for him to do. The bullpen, which was our Achilles last year. Last year we were last in the American League in ERA in the bullpen, and so. For the bullpen to go out today, it gave up 2 runs by Amir Garrett. You know, we're going to have to look at it moving forward to see how are we going to survive as a team. But, you know, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in the lineup that this was their first opening day. Well, 4. Actually, 2 years ago, Isabel started opening day but was optioned down like 10 days later. He was a surprise starter in right field. But, I mean, this was the first day that our right fielder, MJ Melendez, this is his first opening day. He came up midway through the year last year. Vinny Pasquantino at first base, it was his first. Michael Massey at second base, it was his first opening day start, Yeah. And then our left fielder was also his first opening day start today. So we're going to be, for the most part, we'll be the youngest team in baseball.
Right.
Not just the American League for this year. And so there's going to be some growing pains that go along with that. We've got a new manager. We've got a new pitching coach. We've got a new assistant pitching coach. All of those things are going to have to come together. And like I say, it's different once you turn on the lights for real. Cactus League and Grapefruit League is all fine and good, but this is for keeps now. And you got your best 9 versus somebody else's best 9, and we're going to see who's over the long haul, who's got the better 9.
Absolutely. So, looking at today, just as a fan, I'll use me as the example. So I'm the fan, and I didn't watch the game. And yes, I did watch it a little bit, and I listened to it on the radio every chance I got. But I look at the scoreboard, and I see Minnesota 2-0. I see that the Royals get shut out again. What gives me hope for the season?
What gives you hope is that young players have a chance to grow. If this was a veteran team and you said these guys are not getting any better, same guys doing the same thing, the hope is that youth brings hope. And so when you look at the youthfulness that we have, there is some hope, but it's like any day, right? Everybody started today 0-0. 15 teams are not going to win today.
Right.
And so what is going to make you think it's going to be any different? Maybe those who did pay attention to spring training said, well, maybe it's going to be a little bit different. It was probably our best spring training in about 10 years. And so probably other than 2015, where we literally led wire to wire, was good in spring training, all of that, when they won the World Series last. So I think at the end of the day, there's a renewed my hope lies in a renewed commitment from the ownership, from leadership, from the new manager, and everybody that's going to bring about positivity. I thought we took a step in the right direction, too, with Salvador Perez being named captain. So now, from an accountability standpoint, we have somebody who we have deemed the clubhouse leader. It's one of the things that I said has been missing from the Royals is who is our clubhouse leader? Who is the guy who's going to call the players only meeting and be responsible for holding teammates accountable, not the coaching staff, not the general manager or anybody else, but as a player. You're my accountability partner as a teammate, and you didn't hustle that ball out, or you're not concentrating, or you're loafing after the ball in the field. You need that, okay? And who's going to be that guy? Well, we put a sticker on him today. We made it, in which I've never seen Salvi as that guy, right? I've always seen Salvi as the guy who keeps everybody loose, keeps everybody, hey, it's not too bad today, man, and he's very good at just being himself. And so, but now, let's see if that helps.
So how much does he has to change in his personality?
I don't think he has to change in his personality. I think in his execution is where he's going to have to change in wearing the title of captain. I've got to hold myself accountable first.
Right.
And then everybody else. And so to say that you are now the official leader. He's always been a leader,
Right.
but more by example. I just think more than anything else, he's going to have to be a little bit more vocal to make sure that the Royals brand that's out there on the field is emblematic of the Royals of the 70s, the 85 championship team, and the 20, because he's the last link to the championship team.
I believe he is the only player
Yeah.
that's still there.
He's the last link.
Yep.
He's the only guy that knows what it's like to be in a World Series.
So
From that standpoint, I don't believe that we have somebody who's come over as a free agent. I'm not sure. Has Greinke ever played in the World Series?
Greinke has. He's won it, but it was with Houston.
I know it wasn't with us.
But he was already gone. I believe he left in roughly like 2010, 2012.
He left in 2012 because he was the guy that brought Locaine and Escobar.
Okay,
here.
that's right. The Minnesota,
to
the
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee trade.
Yeah.
And then right after that was the James Shield trade that we sent Will Myers and others down. So, so we're going to have a lot of growing pains. How can we keep it from making it an extreme growing pain season?
Well, I think the biggest thing is going to be the style of play at which we have. We're going to have to get back to putting pressure on the defense and playing a little bit of small ball and running. The base as well. The stolen base is going to have to be our friend when you look at our lineup. We've got probably 6 of the 9 guys that could steal up to 20 bases in our lineup, depending on who's in there on any given day. We know Bobby can run, okay? Isabel can run. Massey can run.
Hernandez
can run, right? So we've got guys that can run.
Right.
And I think that's how we're going to have to approach it. Play really good defense and until the bats become more consistent. And that's going to give it, because we're not going to be the Bronx Bombers.
Right.
Okay. We're not going to be playing for the 3 or 4 run home. We're going to have to bunch.
We did in
up.
Cactus League though.
Yeah, the ball travels in Arizona, and Kauffman Stadium is not home run friendly.
No,
And
it is
so
one of the worst home run
we
friendly
may be
stadiums.
more successful on the road, but at home, it's not home run conducive to that. Our job is going to be to put the ball in the gaps and run. Yeah, we've got some guys that have some potential power to hit 20-plus home runs. When you look at Pasquantino, you look at Melendez. I believe Isbell has that type of power. We know Salvi has that power. Dozier could hit 20-plus home runs, if he stays consistent. So there is some power bats in the lineup, but we can't play like the Yankees, and that's going to be our motto. We're going to have to hit and run. We're going to have to steal bases. We're going to have to move runners, play solid defense, and then somebody has to step up and stop a losing streak from the pitching perspective, right? And whether that's Singer or Bubich or whoever.
Right.
Okay, we brought in a couple of veteran pitchers to be a part of our rotation and give us a chance to stay out of those prolonged losing streaks. And I think, to me, that's going to be the key to the season is, can we turn what used to be a 7 or 8 game losing streak into a 3-game losing streak? And then our 3-game winning streak, can we extend it to 5, 6, 7 and not go back the other way? Whereas like last year, I think we had one stretch where we won 9 out of 10, and then boom, we turn right back around and lose 9 out of 10.
Right. Now, the management of baseball has given teams better opportunities to score by changing rules, time pitching. I know that in preseason or in spring training, that the games had improved, I believe, 30 minutes. Was it 33 minutes? I want to say they were averaging something like 2 hours and 36 minutes, and last year they were averaging something like 3 hours and 6 minutes. So I know the tempo of the game is so, but with the shift, the throwing towards first base. I think you can only throw it over there 3 times before they are either given a base or whatever.
Well, you get 2 free throws to pick off attempts. You can throw a third consecutive time, but if you don't pick the runner off, then the runner advances 1 base.
Okay.
Once you throw a pitch, then all bets are off again, right?
Yeah.
So the hitter has 1 official timeout per at bat where he can ask for time. And then after that, he has to stay in there. The pitcher with nobody on base gets 15 seconds to start his windup.
Right.
With runners on, he gets 20 seconds. And then we've increased the square inches of the base, and the runner has now basically got the base 4 inches closer to where he was coming from.
Right. Absolutely.
How that's going to motivate somebody to steal bases, I've yet to figure that out.
You know what? I think we need to hire Ricky Henderson just to be a stolen base coach, because I'm telling you what, he didn't need those 4 extra inches on that base. He would steal it. I remember watching games. He would just walk. He would steal second. He would steal third, and then they'd hit a fly ball in the outfield, score a run.
In the world that we live in the era that we live in of specialization, there's no financial incentive to run. The guy who gets paid the most money is the guy who hits the home runs. And so the last time that a stolen base leader was the highest paid player in baseball, it was Ricky back in 1990. For about 3 months, he was the highest paid player in the game until the Brewers reworked Robin Yount's contract. And so think about this. When Mike Trout first came to the big leagues, he regularly stole 30 to 40 bases a year.
Right.
Mike Trout last year had 0 steals. Mike Trout got a big contract now. There's no incentive for me to steal. Okay, they pay me to hit the ball out of the park and to play defense. There's no incentive. If you want to get guys stealing bases, pay the base stealer what you would pay a home run hitter.
And right now, that would be very difficult to do. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but well, like you said, with today's game and the analytics and all that,
yeah.
You just can't.
Well, in analytics, and I really hate to use that term because it is what I like to call it is research and development. Research and development says that there's not as much advantage to stealing the base from a risk-reward standpoint, and I would differ with them on that because I'm 90 feet closer.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the thing more than anything that has a chance for more stolen bases to happen is going to be the fact of the pitcher now is limited with how many throws. And so now when he's thrown over there twice at me,
right,
now there's a good chance that he won't. But old school baseball guys, now I can still pitch out. I can still do a whole lot of things to try to negate the running game.
Right. But at the same time, they can pitch out, but then it still slows the game down. And that's the last thing that Major League Baseball wants done. They want these games because you're coddling these TV contracts because these contracts are billions of dollars. And the reason why a lot of them doesn't get into baseball is because of the fact that there are so many, or the time is so long that they don't want to do it. So now they're like, it's almost like the TV is controlling it.
TV viewership has something to do with it, but it's still trying to bring in a new generation of fans. It's not like the generation of old where every kid grew up playing baseball or softball or sandlot ball, just hanging out in the neighborhood. These kids now specialize in sport. And I even would challenge the kids who play baseball, how much do you actually watch the game and are fans of the game versus I'm good at the game and so therefore I play it, but I'm really not a huge fan of it like I was as a kid growing up anytime I wanted to see. And I think also because you have access to so much baseball versus, 40 plus years ago or 50 years ago, you had a couple of options. You had the Saturday game of the week, maybe a doubleheader, and Monday night baseball. And that was it, and then we started to expand our TV and cable capabilities. Now with the MLB package, you can watch every game.
Right.
You have access to it. I know I have it.
Right.
And so therefore I have access to every game. Now, for me, that's lovely, but for a generation that is growing up in 3 to 15 minute sound bites through YouTube, to sit and watch a game for 3+ hours is hard for them to do.
Right.
I mean, it's just different. It's like they won't even do block scheduling in school anymore, where you have a class that lasts for an hour and a half. They're not being trained that way, and so the average baseball fan now is a 54-year-old white male. And so how are you going to get this next generation? Well, part of it is to speed the game up. Well, what about a 3-hour football game? Well, a 3-hour football game is once a week. When I'm playing baseball every night, especially during the week, and if I'm a person who I work and I got to get up early the next morning, am I going to really take my kids to the game because they got school the next morning? There's a lot of things that used to not seem to be an issue that are an issue now when it comes to fan participation, viewership, all of those things. And so here, this is where we are. Me personally, old school Darwin Penny loves the pitch clock, believe it or not. Okay. I love it because I used to tell my pitchers that when I was a high school coach or when I coached in college summer league or even when I was a minor league coach, we work fast, throw strikes, and change speeds. We push the pace of the game. I didn't want to slow. But really where you pick up the time is not so much in between pitches, but in between innings. If you notice, there's a 2-minute clock that they've got to be back out on the field within 2 minutes. Sometimes, to me, that's where you lose your time. And then some of the unnecessary trips to the mound and all of that. And so now every pitcher now has a 3-batter minimum, right? And so you don't get he just threw to one batter and now we're going to get this guy and he throws to one batter and then we go get this other guy and he throws to.
Right, because isn't it a 3-batter minimum?
3-batter minimum now. So to me, those are things that happen. Now, all of these things have been implemented in the minor leagues over the last 2 years. And so they've got some data to substantiate that the games went from 3+ hours to 2.5 hours. Now, I tell anybody, old school matchup, you used to see, if you saw Greg Maddux and Roy Oswalt, I used to tell them, you'd better be in your seat when the first pitch is thrown, because I watched those guys throw an hour and 50-minute game, because both of those guys worked really fast.
Oh, absolutely.
And everything.
And they threw strikes.
They dominated the zone. That was the other thing for us that we've got to get better at. As the Royals, we were also last in the American League in strikes from the bullpen last year.
Wasn't we number one or the worst team we led the league in walks, and we also led in first first pitch strikes, or we were dead last in that. And that's what caused it, because when you are behind, you have to throw it down the middle, or you have to throw a strike, and the batters are prepared, and obviously they're bigger and stronger and everything else. But still, you know, if you had a Greg Maddux, it didn't matter if he was Aaron Judge or Ricky Henderson. He was going to throw strikes and was going to not necessarily strike you out, but he was going to throw a pitch that you were going to hit his pitch and not hit your pitch. So
right, he threw quality strikes,
right,
not just right down the middle.
And doesn't it go back to fundamentals and technique? Because a lot of it now, you know, just like in basketball, you either shooting a three-pointer or you're slam dunking. You're not doing the stuff in between. Well, baseball is the same way. You're trying to throw it past them, throwing it 140 miles an hour, and if you don't throw it right, they're going to hit it 5 miles. So
every sport always comes back to fundamentals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Free throws and layups and basketball,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and turnovers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Football, we talk about turnover game all the time.
Yep.
You know, many times still, even though we use running backs different, time possession of clock, right? Possessing the clock, right? You control the clock, you control the game.
Right.
Right? Time of possession, it's a big deal. And then baseball, I always say, you know, the team that throws strikes and forces the other team to put the ball and makes fewer errors, it comes back to show. Eventually, it's a fundamental principle. It's time tested. Yeah, we do have a lot of throwers and not as many pitchers because velo is up. Guys throw harder, you know, now. And I don't like to always say that. Part of it is because you're not asking guys to go as long as you used to.
Right.
So guys could always throw hard. It was just guys used to have to pace themselves because they knew they was going out there 7, 8, 9 innings to start a game. You know, classic example was, to me, the best arm that's ever played this game, Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan start the first inning, he'd be 92, 93, and then he'd crank up, be 94, 95. And then 6 or 7 innings in, he'd be 98 to 100, you know.
Right.
And the other thing is the technology in the gun catches the ball sooner out of their hand, whereas it used to catch the ball closer to the plate. And we know through physics that the ball is at its peak when it first comes out, and then it starts to slow progressively, depending on the spin rate of the ball, things like that. And so there's a lot that we could talk about, you know, as far as is what's different in the game and what's changed. But the one thing I do know is it's here to stay. And so we've either got to embrace and adjust, or you wind up watching something else.
Well, and speaking of that, you also need good leadership. Yeah, I mean, I understand Roger Goodell. A lot of people don't like him, but he's a good leader. He gets his owners what they want. They want to give him big money. Manfred is totally different. I mean, I remember Pete Uberoff, and there was the one before that.
So the commissioners that I've known are, first you had Bowie Kuhn.
Oh, Bowie Kuhn. That's right.
Right. So you had him. You had Uberoff. You had A. Bartlett Giamatti, the one who died suddenly, but he was the one who banned Pete Rose from baseball.
Right.
Right. And then we dealt with no guy for a while, and then we had Bud Selig.
Right.
In the steroid era, and then we've gone from Selig to Rob Manfred.
And to me, that's the two worst commissioners.
And I'm not at liberty to say that. So,
well, then I'm going to say that I really think they were horrible because Selig was a owner. He had to give up his ownership in which he gave to his daughter, so it really wasn't giving it up. He was just passing it aside. But he just, brought in the steroids. He said it was okay to do the steroids. allegedly he said it was okay to do the steroids, but then when people started complaining, then he threw everybody under the bus and just made it worse possible. But what he was trying to do was get fans back in the seat after the Baco and the 94 strike, which didn't even produce a World Series at all. You had Ken Griffey Jr. possibly hitting a home run record. You had Tony Gwynn possibly hitting 400s for the first time since Ted Williams hit 406. You had the Kansas City Royals playing their best since 1985. And it just totally decimated a lot of fans, and a lot of fans have not came back from it.
Yeah, it was devastating in a lot of ways. The last organization that I played for, the Montreal Expos, probably are still in Montreal if it weren't for the strike season, because they were the best team in baseball that year.
Yep.
And then without a World Series championship, they began to dismantle that team, which then in turn made them not have the fan popularity. And when you don't have people and butts in the seats, you wind up in Washington, D.C.
Right. And
So who knows what would have happened if the Expos play that year out and win the World Series.
Well,
I think we'd probably still have a team in Montreal.
Well, here's another thing. If Toronto did not win the two World Series, what was it, 92 and 93, they could have been gone too, because I really feel that they were going to try to get rid of the Canadian teams.
Yeah, it was going to be tough. At least Toronto had a chance once they invested in a new stadium. The Expos never invested in a new stadium. They were playing in an old Olympic stadium, and it did not help the situation as far as retaining players, as far as the on-field staff, a lot of things like that factored into it. So, but that's the things that you deal with in a game, that people are expecting you to go out and put a quality product on the field, and we're expecting you to go out and to win and to compete. And when you don't do that, people don't go to the ballpark. And that's one of the reasons why I said if I could be commissioner, I'd have halves,
Right.
just to keep the fan interest there.
Absolutely. And I think that was a brilliant idea. Not because you're my co-host, you're my brother with another mother, but it is a logical decision to do that. And you would think that would make more money for baseball to do something like that, because it would bring more people in, it would get more viewers, it would get more interest, and it would be intense, just like NFL. When you had 90% of the team still in the playoffs with a couple of weeks left, that brought interest. Well, when you have a Royals or a Milwaukee or somebody like that, and they're already out by May, what is there to do to try to boost the enthusiasm? And you just can't do that.
Makes it hard.
And so we are at the first half of Any Given Sunday. We've had a great show talking baseball. And fans, our fans, I am going to put out a number, 256,296,950. Think about that number, and I will tell you what that means on the second half of Any Given Sunday. Coach 24, DJ Scatter, and I'm Awesome Voice. We are KUAW. Hello. All right, we are back for the second half of Any Given Sunday. I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, Coach 24 Darwin Penny across from me, and behind the scenes running the show, DJ Scatter, George Walker. Now, I had mentioned a number, and it was $256,296,950. That number was the total salary of Major League Baseball in 1987. Now, there have been players who have signed contracts for 10 years. Juan Soto just turned down a 13-year, $360 million contract to play for the Washington Nationals, and now he plays for the San Diego Padres. So, cool. That will work. So, saying this, so 256 million was the salary of every player. It was 624 ball players, with Eddie Murray leading the pack. He was making $2.4 million, and I'm believing that's based on the average. And here it is. It's guaranteed base salary, including signing bonuses prorated over the length of the contract. Mm-hmm. So, Eddie Murray was number one, $2.46 million. Jim Rice was second, with just a little bit less than him at $2.41 million. You had George Brett, 1.5. You had Rick Sutcliffe, who a couple of years prior had won the Cy Young. He was 1.8. And the minimum average was $62,500. So, what is the salary? What is the leading salary in today's? We'll go back to 2022.
Okay,
Go back.
So Mike Trout today has the biggest contract.
Okay.
His total value is 12 years, $426,500,000, which makes his average annual value of $35.5 million. Now, there are some guys that have higher per year.
Right.
But total package right now, until Ohtani signs a long-term deal,
right,
that's the highest one. Mookie Betts is $365 million. Aaron Judge is $360 million, with an average salary, because his was for 9 years, of $40 million per year. Manny Machado, who recently just signed a contract this offseason, $350 million for 11 years. Francisco Lindor, 10 years, $341 million. Fernando Tatis, 14 years, $340 million. So, and then Bryce Harper at 13 years, $330 million.
So when you got players that were getting that, it just shows what 35 years does. Mm-hmm. And it also shows that we were young. We were very, very young studs. So we're not as young anymore, but it's still a great thing. So, but with the salaries like that, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And my philosophy is, hey, I get people all the time. My parents are one of the people that always say they shouldn't pay these players this much money, blah, blah, blah. Look, this is America. If you can do it, God bless you. But saying that, is it good for the game to have that much?
I think I'm going to always say it's good, because nobody is upset about every time they open a new Walmart on a different store, and how much money that the Walton family or anything else. It's how you see. You don't see baseball or football or
Right.
basketball as a job, as a profession.
Right.
You see it still as a game, right? It's not life altering. It is not the same as some neurosurgeon. I readily admit that. I think we have placed value at how much you should get paid based on the amount of education that you have. And those who may play sport may not be as educated as those who are outside. But if that was truly the value, then our teachers would make more money than they make, because teachers train every field.
Yeah.
Okay. They would make more money, and the highest paid teacher would not be a college professor. It
Right.
would be a kindergarten teacher who teaches you how to read. That opens up everything else to you, because reading comprehension is the key to every other subject. If you can't read, doesn't matter.
Right.
So, but that's what it is, because I've had this conversation with a neurosurgeon before who said, I can't believe how much they pay these athletes. But do you ever ask yourself, if an owner can pay Mike Trout $426 million contract, how much is he making?
You know he's going to make a lot more. the
He's
guy
not-
at
right. So it's a food chain, right?
Right.
So it's what's called the going rate, right? If you go out and you work on a job and 40 hours a week, and the going rate for your profession for that job is $75,000 a year, and you're good at your job, what do you want to make? I want to make $75,000 a year, because that's what the going rate is for my job.
right.
Well, if the going rate says that if I hit 300 with 40 home runs and 125 RBIs, that's a $40 million a year player, then guess what I want to make? I want
Right.
to make $40 million a year. If 20 and 10 in the NBA, 20 points and 10 rebounds is getting a guy $10 million, then guess what? I want $10 million. So it's all relative to market value. Okay? And so you have to view it as a profession. And as a professional athlete, that window is a very small window. You're going to be done, the average. So we look at the big name guys who are making the money, but the reality of it is there are so many guys that are going to play 1, maybe 2 years in the big leagues.
Right.
And he's not going to make $300-400 million, right?
Right.
He's going to make a lot less. And then I've got to find another career. Every athlete has to eventually find another career, no matter how much money they make, you know, because you could figure out, what am I going to do with this wealth that I've acquired? Okay, maybe you turn it into more money like Michael Jordan, and you buy a NBA franchise, or you do like Tiger Woods and you start designing courses and look at other revenue streams and endorsements and all of those type of things. And so it's what somebody is willing to tell you your value is. It's not about what you're worth, right? We've gone through this with quarterbacks, right?
Right.
And so it is the market value. The market value on an NFL starting franchise quarterback right now is $40 million.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Joe Montana never made that much.
No, never
Terry
did.
Bradshaw never made that much.
Nope.
Okay, Elway, Marino, and those guys didn't make that much.
No.
Okay, but as compared to the rest of America, they made above what the rest of America was making.
Right. But they also wasn't working those jobs that, you know, they were working their jobs and the athletes were working their jobs, which is
Absolutely.
totally different.
Absolutely.
So, like at the post office, I make a certain amount of money. Where you work at, you get paid for a certain amount. And Mr. Walker, when you were, what was it, when you were at AT&T? Was it AT&T? So when you were at AT&T, you were making a certain amount. So I know, and it's so easy because Brian Kress is a third string player on in a position for this team, Team A, and I make $100,000. They're not going to look at it. But if Darwin Penny over here is the top running back and he makes $10.5 or $15 million, that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look at, oh my gosh, why is he getting paid all this? And it doesn't matter if he was an all-pro, if he had won a Super Bowl for his team, if he had been injured half the year or whatever. The point of it is that he got paid that much, and he got paid for it for a reason. It wasn't like he just showed up and said, hey, pay me this amount, and they go, oh, okay. Because owners are, I hate to say it, but they are a little bit smarter than that. Now, there are some very, very good, smart owners, and then you got Bidwell in Arizona and a few others like that, and I won't go anymore. But you've got the geniuses and the very smart ones, and then you've got the ones that are not as smart. And there are reasons why certain teams also win, and certain teams don't win. I mean, even Arizona made it to the Super Bowl and everything else, but they never had made it consistently. Cleveland is one of the longest franchises, them and Detroit, and neither one of them have made it to a Super Bowl. You know, I mean, you've got the Houston Texans. They've only been around for a small period of time compared to these two. So you can say, okay, well, they haven't been around. But when is Cleveland and Detroit supposed to have it? And it goes all back to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Remember the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
Attitude reflects leadership, Captain.
Yep.
And people don't think that. They just they see something and they react. They don't stop and think and make a logical decision. They based everything on emotion. So.
Absolutely. So it is, when we look at salaries, I think every profession, predecessors would say, man, they're making way more than what we made.
Right.
Okay. Even if a guy was a farrier shoeing horses, he's making more than a farrier made 50 years ago.
Right.
So it's relative, but we also pay more for other services, right, that they may not have utilized.
Right.
And so I certainly paid more for my house than what my parents paid, and my house is probably 500 square foot larger than theirs was, but I paid it significantly more than what my parents paid in 1970 when they paid $20,000 for a house. Right. Can you get a house for $20,000 today?
Not a good one.
Absolutely. So it's relative to cost of living and inflation and everything else. So
well, and let's just say we go out to eat. Well, Perry Mason was from 1957 to 1966. So in roughly 1957, 1958, they had a episode where the woman said, you get a burger and you get a fries, and it costs 35 cents. Where today are you going to pay anything for 35 cents? You can't even get like extra ketchup for 35 cents.
Absolutely. No, it's a different world we live in, but that's going to always drive the conversation is salaries.
Right.
What a athlete, and I'm telling you, and my belief and my stance will always be based on education. Whereas you see a lot of these athletes, especially in baseball, we have athletes that didn't even go to college. We've got basketball guys who maybe have only went 1 year of college. Football is the sport now where we've probably got the most college players, because there's nobody that really goes from high school. There's nobody that goes from high school to the pros in the NFL, and so they've got to have at least 3 years worth of college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but again, if you've got an MBA from Harvard,
Mm-hmm.
then people expect you to make a lot of money.
Right.
But if you don't have you've got a basketball MBA,
Right.
then you're supposed to be limited as to how much, and it's just the way people look at it, because we find a lot more people in sport that make money that come from not as much wealth. A lot of guys are first generation people to have wealth,
Right.
and things like that. Guys that have come out of, we've seen them. They've come out of nothing. They've come out of poverty.
Right.
These Latin American ball players, these guys were below poverty.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
now all of a sudden you giving a guy, $300 million.
Right.
And so that's a big, huge jump.
Okay. So, what do? Don't they get somebody that helps them finance their money?
They should.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So with the incident going on with Lamar Jackson, he has been trying to deal with the Ravens without a use of an agent. How much has that hurt him in negotiating with the Ravens, or wanting to get out of the Ravens, or trying to get a contract?
Well, I believe personally that it has created a stalemate in how far they're willing to move the needle. But I think at the end of the day, it really wouldn't matter who he had as an agent. I do know this: they don't want to deal with his mother, right, as a representative, not an agent or anybody.
Kenneth
now that he's got somebody
Francis,
else
whatever,
who is not a certified agent with the league.
Right.
And so I think at the end of the day, but for me, the agent can only do what the player asks them to do.
Right.
Right. And the player still has the final say on, I'll sign that or I won't. All you can do is take advice from your agent. And if your agent is able to go and speak for you and you have trust for them and they're able to show analytically and other ways what your value is, and then help with with how the contract is written, and so that you are in line with adhering to all parts of the contract. It is what it is to have somebody represent you. But I think at the end of the day, they have drawn a hard line and said, Lamar, you can't hold us to Cleveland's bad contract with Deshaun. That's a bad contract with Deshaun. And it's not bad because Deshaun's a bad player, but it's bad because all of that money is guaranteed with so many uncertainties about what's going to happen there. And so they're determined to say, we're not going to be held to the bad contract standard. We're just not going to do it.
So does his health, missing 10 games in the last 2 years, or I think it was like 10 to 12 games in the last 2 years, I feel that it would have benefited him if he just had a bad year or 2 bad years of performance, let alone of 2 years of injured football.
Well, at the end of the day, they can say what they want to say about missed games, things like that. They're part of that problem in how they utilize his skill set. But at the end of the day, what he would say if I was him, are you better with or without me? They're significantly better with Lamar Jackson as their quarterback. Their winning percentage is way higher. I mean, the record speaks to that they are a better team. They score more points with him playing.
Right.
I think that's pretty simple. But what they have determined is, like, we're not going to get hung out on a bad contract. And then the thing that you want to talk about now is his injury. I think personally he could have played some games at the end of the year last year,
right,
had he had a contract.
Yeah.
I believe he would have been a lot more willing to work through the pain and go out there like a Mahomes did.
Right.
But it's a lot easier for Mahomes to go out there and do it when I got $500 million in the bank.
That is also true.
Okay. I'm willing to suck it up for the team a little bit.
Right. So
it's gotten bad at this point. I think it would be better for Lamar to play somewhere else. I think now
but who is he going to play for? That's the problem. I mean, even
somebody would take him, but they're not at the same thing. We're not going to give you what you're that much. If you're willing to take 180 million guaranteed, well, I do believe that there's teams that'll take him. Why wouldn't the Saints take him?
Right.
Okay. Why wouldn't Atlanta take him?
Right.
Because he's better than what they have. Okay.
Absolutely.
And I know that at the end of the day, the Seahawks gave Geno some money.
Right.
But I believe they'd work a deal and say for Lamar, and we ain't got to pay $200 million. Oh yeah, we'll dive into that. We'll dive into that. Tell me the Redskins wouldn't want Lamar over what they have.
Right.
They can say what they want to say. What they're saying is we don't want to pay you that much money, Lamar. Bring that number down. Everything changes. But when you're going out here saying I want basically $200 to $240 million guaranteed, then everybody's like, oh, we'll take our $10 million quarterback.
See, and that hurts him more than it hurts the team. Yes, Baltimore doesn't have a good quarterback. They have Hundley, and you saw him against Cincinnati in the playoffs, how valuable he is. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he was bad, but he hurt them, and to a sense, possibly cost the game.
Yeah. Well, if they don't have that fumble return for a touchdown,
well, that
might be a different story.
So that's what I was trying to say. So, yeah, this is going to be very interesting. And from what I heard, that they've got until the 17th, not necessarily a timeline deadline of the 17th, but after the 17th, it's going to be more difficult because you're going to have the draft and everything else. So that is the end of our show. But
we should have like the OJs playing in the background, money, money, money.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, but we're not quite over yet. We have the best segment of the show still coming, and we've got it right now. Penny, for your thoughts.
Well, I'm gonna get away from the traditional sports today. Today is March 30th, right? And a famous, some people would call him an athlete, some people wouldn't. But when we live in an era today where there's always an argument about who's the greatest of all time, was it Michael Jordan? Is it LeBron? Is it Ohtani? Is it Mike Trout? Is it Babe Ruth? Is it Hank Aaron? Is it Willie Mays, right? When we talk about that football, we talk about Brady and they talk about Jim Brown and all of that. But there's one sport, okay, even in soccer, Pele versus Ronaldo and all these other guys, right? But there's one universal GOAT, and believe it or not, was born on March 30th, 1970. And it was the greatest racehorse of all time, Secretariat. Secretariat, the greatest racehorse of all time, set records in all three of the major horse races of the Triple Crown. His performance at the Preakness and at the Belmont still stand today. Yeah. It's unbelievable at how great a horse he was. And so, but in 1970, on March 30th, the greatest of all time, Secretariat, even when ESPN did their greatest 100 athletes, he was the only non-human on that greatest 100.
And where was he at?
I think they had him at like number 90-something.
Oh, he should have been a lot higher. But I totally agree. I remember that he would beat other horses by like 20 lengths.
It was like he was riding in the trailer and they were all by the wayside. Yep. He was that great, and then certainly lived for 19 years, which is a long time for a horse.
Yes.
But he was one of a kind, and so we take our hat off to a time in history as we start to approach horse racing Triple Crown with the Run for the Roses coming up in May. We take our hat off to Secretariat.
And that is a great ending to a phenomenal show. Again, you knocked it out of the park, which I wish the Royals would have done. Coach 24, Darwin Penny. We've got George Walker, DJ Scatter. I am Brian Cressy, Awesome Voice. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a phenomenal sports weekend. And go the NCAA finals.